Our next question is a lovely finance question again, and it comes from Anele Pankinikelo. Anele, thank you for this question. It's quite a nice question, and I would like to discuss it with you using a timeline, folks. A timeline is always a very necessary part of financial maths, especially if there's interest rates that change, or payments that change, or payments that we skip. Okay, I'll read it for us, and then as I read it, we will make the necessary notes on the screen. The question says, Temba paid off a 20 years. So N is a 20-year home loan of 800,000 Rand. So the present value is 800,000 Rand for this home loan. During the period, the interest rate charged is during the period of the loan. So the interest rate that they're charging us is 10.5% per annum compounded monthly. So remember, this rate is something we can't work with. That's our nominal rate. We need to change that into an effective rate per month. And we're going to do so by dividing it by 12, because we're changing the stated period and not the compounding period. If you change the compounding period, you need to use some conversion. Okay, then they say, okay, for the first 5 years, oopsie. Okay, so this interest rate was charged for a period, I'm going to make this period N1, 5 years. And let's make this R1. Then thereafter, they say for the remainder of the period, so for N2, which will then be the remaining 15 years, the interest rate, the second interest rate was charged at 9.25% per annum, again, compounded monthly. Now, folks, this is important. Please, you have to take note of that interest rate. We can't use that interest rate. We can only use it if the stated period and the compounding period is the same thing. That is what we call an effective interest rate, where your stated period and your compounding period is the same. So it's per annum compounded annually, or per month compounded monthly, per year is an annum, per quarter compounded quarterly, and so forth. Okay, so now they ask us the very first question, calculate for 3 marks the effective interest rate during the first 5 years of this loan. Okay, so for 1.1, they want the effective interest rate. So we can take our R value and we can say the R value is 10.5 divided by 12. Okay, and that makes it an interest rate, that's that percentage, per month, compounded monthly. Now, they weren't clear here, Anele, whether they want the effective annual rate. So in other words, they want us to change this to per annum, compounded annually, or are we talking about the effective rate per period, the actual one that we're going to use in the problem? Let's see what this gets us to. If I do this little division over there, we get that our interest rate is 0.875% per month, compounded monthly, which will then make, we need to change this to an effective decimal rate. If they ask the other one, let me just do both with you, then we will have 1 plus, now you've seen this on your formula sheet, 1 plus I effective is equal to, now because this is a monthly rate, we have 1 plus I12 over 12 all to the power of 12. Okay, now what does this mean? I put my I12 in here. Now remember, your I12 over 12 will be the 10.5 that you have over there divided by 1200. And then you've still got to raise it to the power of 12. Okay, now that gives us 0.008 875. Okay, that goes in there as 1,00875 to the power of 12. Take the 1 over, multiply by 100, and you have your effective annual rate. So the rest of this is nice, clean-cut calculator work. I like this top one. This is what we are going to use going forward in our problem. Okay, we need this to read per month, compounded monthly, which is what we get over here. So all that's left for us is to change this R1 into an I1 going forward. Let's see what the next part of the question asks us to do for 4 marks. We calculate the initial monthly payment before the interest rate was changed. Now, when I read this question first, Anele, I thought, no, this question is not, I don't think it's set in a way that it makes sense. So there's a lot of interpretation that can happen here. And I say so because you are doing 2 different interest rates. So when you have 2 different interest rates, that means you interfered with your annuity. The moment you interfere with an annuity, it's like a shongololo, it shrivels up and it just disappears, it doesn't move. Okay, so the moment you change something, and in this case, we're changing the interest rate mid through our annuity, then a new annuity has to kick in. Okay, but I phoned a friend. I've got a lovely friend. She teaches at Sunninghill, Natalie Lindsay. I phoned her and I said, help me, Nats, because this question doesn't make sense to me. And she made perfect sense to me when we discussed it. Now, she suggested, and it's very true, we do not know, folks, when we take out a loan and we settle on the terms of the loan, for 20 years, we will pay this amount. Now, you heard Tito Mboweni today saying that the repo rate isn't changing. So the banks do not have to change the interest that they're charging us. But every time the repo rate changed through this COVID period, the banks had to recalculate what we owe them per month. And this is pretty much what this question does. So we're going to treat the first scenario as we didn't know COVID was going to happen. Okay, so for the 240 months of this loan, we are going to calculate the payment. Now, let me just introduce you to the timeline. Our timeline says our present value is 180,000. Then we have T0, and we go up to T240, which is 20 years of 12 months per year, gives us 240 months. We usually start paying a loan back 1 month after the loan was granted. Okay, so this was the plan. The plan happened at an effective decimal of 0.00875. So now we want to know, calculate the initial monthly payment. Okay, and that is a present value because it's a loan that we're paying back. It's a mortgage, it's a bond. Okay, so our present value formula applies, which gives us x, 1 minus 1 plus I, all of this to the minus n over I. Remember, this is a geometric sequence that calculates that value for us. So our present value now is 800,000 Rand. 800,000 is equal to x. Then we have 1 minus 1,00875 to the power of minus 240, because at the initial part of this loan, we agreed with the bank that we will make 240 payments of X Rand each at a particular interest rate. Okay, now folks, this is calculator work. You must make sure, whatever calculator you're using, that you do your calculations slowly and accurately so that you do not make a mistake. How I usually do this is I calculate this part, then I invert this part and I multiply it with the 800,000. Okay, so whichever one you want to use, whichever way you want to use, You're going to put this into your calculator and you are going to get a beautiful answer of 7,987 Rand and 4 cents. So this is now what this loan of 800,000 would have cost you at that interest rate for 20 years. Okay, so then COVID happened, okay? And the president said, let us give the public a little bit of financial break. Let's lower our interest rates. Tito Mboweni went on TV and said, okay, instead of paying for this particular loan, instead of paying this 10.5, we are now going to ask you to pay 9.25. So he dropped it by more than 1% there, 1.25%. Yeah, 1.25%. That's a big drop. Okay, so what do I need to do now? I know that my second interest rate, and this is the third part of the question, my second interest rate that they gave me was, R2 was 9.25%. To be able, this is per annum compounded monthly. To be able to use that, I need to take the 9.25 and I need to divide it by 1200 to make it a decimal and to turn it into an effective per month. So this dividing by 1200 gives us a result of 0.0077083, and then the threes recur. It's an ugly number. But remember, when you put that into your calculator, just keep on recurring the threes like 5 or 6 times so that you don't treat it as if you're rounding it off. Okay, so what happens now? What does the bank do now? The bank says, fine, we're giving everybody a break. The interest rate has dropped, so we need to recalculate the loan payment. So they reschedule the loan. How do they reschedule it? Well, they want the outstanding balance after the first 60 payments was made. Okay? Now that outstanding balance after the first 60 means 180 weren't made. We've made the first 60. We've paid 5 years of this loan. Okay? There's 180 that's still outstanding. Now what does the banks do? They take the interest away from those last 180 payments, bring everything to the point 60, and then reschedules the loan. So we know what we paid. The outstanding balance will then be, we're basically going to revisit this formula, and we know that, and we want this. Okay, so we say this is 7987.04. So we're working the present value of all those payments that was still to be made. And that is important, folks. 00875. Let me just move that one away a bit. I'm going to put it there on the side because I have, yeah, there we go. Okay, so we've got our period is 180. There's 180 of those payments that did not happen. Okay, so the outstanding balance at timeline 60 is, if I go back to my timeline, we made up to timeline 60, so these last ones must all come back to that point for us to reschedule our loan. The present value of all payments yet to be made. So I'm going to say it slowly again. For Anele, I hope you're listening or watching us. The outstanding balance is the present value of all payments yet to be made. Okay, and there's 180 of them yet to be made. We know what the payments are. We know we need 180. We're using the effective rate. So this is simply, again, just calculator work. If you press that into your calculator, you end up with 722,548 Rand and 20 cents. So that is what you still owe the bank after having paid back for 5 years, folks. You literally, if you look at that, you're not even halfway. Okay, so you've paid a lot of interest back. That's the capital value of the money that you still owe the bank. Now the last question says, determine the monthly payment for 4 marks after the interest rate has changed. Okay, so we need a new monthly payment, and all that happens is our period is still 180. So our period is still 180 payments. Oh, I said degrees, my goodness. 180 payments. Then this here is our new present value of our loan. That there is our effective rate that we're going to use. And let's call this new regular payment Y Rand. So we've got to pay Y Rand a month for 180 months for the remainder of this period. Okay, so let's structure our formula again. Present value is x 1 minus 1 plus I to the minus n over I. Okay, remember what I said, all those decimals must go along. So this will be x times 1 minus the 1 plus I, 1 minus 1 comma 0077083 recurring to the power of 180. Okay, there's that amount of payments that must be made. Sorry, and we said we're going to call it Y, so I'll change that for us now. 0,00778083 recurring. Okay, and of course, our present value is this new value. So we said we're going to call it Y because it's not going to be the same as our first payment. So this will be the new payment. Okay, so 722,548,20 is equal to Y multiplied by 1 minus 1,00778083 recurred, 180 divided by 0,00778083 recurring. Okay, with that in mind then, and carefully doing this calculation on your calculator, again, I always calculate this. I turn the answer around with a button that says x to the minus 1, and then I times it with this figure over there. So my final result for this should be 7,436 Rand and 41 cents. Now remember, the previous one was 7,980. So you're paying almost, what, 500 Rand, 7,900 to 7,400 if we round, you're paying 500 less per month on this loan. It's a home loan, so on this bond. Okay, so folks, remember, the moment we change an interest rate, or we skip a payment, or we change our payments in our annuity, the annuity resets itself, and we have to reschedule our loan. Make sure that you can deal with these problems in an exam situation. They're really not difficult. But if you have everything sketched on a timeline, you indicate on the timeline when things are changing and where you're moving to on that timeline, and then you will not make a mistake.